Welcome back to the studio. You're watching Eye on Africa. I'm Shona Bhattacharya. Here are top stories in this edition. Paying still further for his actions, former Chadian dictator Hissène Habré has been ordered to compensate each of his thousands of victims. This after he was sentenced to life in jail earlier this year. A show of force. Tens of thousands of President Joseph Kabila's supporters took to the streets of Kinshasa 2 days after the country's biggest opposition leader returned from exile. And taking a closer look at so-called sexual cleansing in Malawi. One HIV man has been arrested after parents paid him to have ritualized sex with their teenage girls at puberty. A second sentence for Hissène Habré, the former Chadian dictator, has been ordered to provide financial compensation to his victims that number in the thousands. Habré was already sentenced to life in jail in May for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Each victim is now set to receive up to 20 million CFA francs, that's about 30,000 euros, for crimes that include rape, arbitrary detention, and imprisonment. Kyle Brown has more.
Sentenced to life in prison for crimes against humanity in May, the reaction of former Chadian dictator Hissène Habré was all but invisible behind his robes and sunglasses. On Friday, more bad news for a man who conducted a reign of terror over his people for close to 8 years. He's to pay between 15,000 and 30,000 euros in compensation to each victim.
I'm not at all satisfied because I lost a lot of money, and that's not counting the prison term I was forced to serve. I spent 11 months in the cells of Hissène Habré, so you should know there are all sorts of victims.
As to when victims will see any of that money is another matter. The judgment is based on the presumption that a compensation fund will be available, but it's unclear how it will be provided or when.
That remains a major battle for us. In the same way we had to fight for the judgment, we are going to have to fight to make sure the funds are there.
Victims and human rights groups have tried to bring Hissène Habré to justice for more than 20 years. In the 1980s, his forces rounded up Chadians thought to be critical of the government and subjected them to arbitrary detention, torture, and rape. Some 40,000 people are believed to have been killed until he was deposed and fled to Senegal in 1990. Convicted there this year, it's the first time a former head of state has been tried in an African Union-backed prosecution in another African country. Habré's lawyer said he'll be appealing the decision.
A show of force in the streets of Kinshasa. Tens of thousands of President Joseph Kabila's supporters marched on Friday. They carried banners and shouted slogans in favor of the man others say is slowing down the democratic process. 2 days ago, Kabila's longtime opposition rival Etienne Tshisekedi returned to the Democratic Republic of Congo. From Kinshasa, Thomas Nicolin reports.
The government gathered the troops today in Kinshasa. Tens of thousands rallied in support of Joseph Kabila and his National Dialogue Initiative.
We stand behind Joseph Kabila, whom we support. We've got peace with him. We're behind him no matter what problems and difficulties we face.
We're here to support the national dialogue in the DRC so that we can hold peaceful elections. We don't want blood to flow in the DRC. We want young people in the country to live in peace.
We want dialogue because development in Africa depends on the development of this great country in the heart of the continent.
On stage was Obaminaku, the ruling party's Secretary General. He called young militants to promote the national dialogue, expected to begin next month. The crowd erupted with enthusiasm. Party leaders say the meeting was a success.
The Congolese and those in Kinshasa in particular showed they all support dialogue, but also the ideas of the President of the Republic. We want dialogue, not war or violence.
2 days after even bigger crowds filled the streets to welcome home opposition leader Etienne Tshisekedi, the government set out to show the world that the people of Congo are still behind their president.
And as for opposition figure Etienne Tshisekedi, he will be holding a rally of his own on Sunday. The former president of Benin has died. Between 1968 and 1969, Émile Derlin Zansou led the country, which was at that time called the Dahomey Republic. Zansou came to power through the military and was forced out of office following a coup d'etat. He was also accused of participating in a failed coup in 1977, an accusation he always denied. Politics ran in the family as Zansou's nephew Lionel rose to become Benin's prime minister. Émile Derlin Zansou was 98 years old. They call them hyenas, men in Malawi who are paid to engage in so-called sexual cleansing. A man's role is to have unprotected sex with girls who menstruate for the first time, or women who have just become widows or have just undergone an abortion. The girl's parents paid one man in particular who recently told the BBC he was HIV positive. That report led to his arrest, but now some Malawians wonder if the practice has gone too far. Laurent Berstecker reports.
Eric Aniva is a hyena, a man whom parents pay to have sex with their daughters to prepare them for adulthood, a tradition known as sexual cleansing in Malawi. Recently interviewed by the BBC, Aniva said he was paid to have sex with over 100 girls and women.
When the parents of these girls come to me, because they promise to pay me, I do perform this ritual secretly so that no one knows about my actions.
For the young girls who don't have a say in the matter, it's often a traumatizing experience.
My rights were infringed on. I realize now that I was forced to sleep with a man whom I did not choose, and it was not even my time to have sex.
Revelation of the practice has sparked international outrage, especially after Aniva told the BBC he was HIV positive. Faced with the backlash, Malawian authorities arrested Aniva on Monday. The hyena could now be facing a life sentence.
I think it was a wise decision for this man to be arrested. He investigated, and then he found that he has actually violated the law. He will be tried and convicted, and I think that will send a signal to other people who may be doing this.
Aniva is one of 10 hyenas in his village, and for many residents, his arrest won't do enough to end the tradition.
We need to understand that this is a deep-rooted practice, and arresting this man is no solution in itself. The government needs to do more in terms of grassroots civic education.
Malawi passed a law last year raising the minimum marrying age to 18 for girls. Authorities are also working on legislation to regulate the harmful cultural practice, which is thought to affect around 50% of girls in Malawi.
A domino effect in Nigeria after this month's failed coup in Turkey. The Turkish ambassador to Nigeria called on the government in Abuja to close down well over a dozen Turkish schools in the country. Turkey says those Nigerian Turkish international colleges are associated with Fethullah Gulen. He's the U.S.-based cleric whom Ankara accuses of sponsoring the July 15th failed coup attempt. The Olympics in Rio kick off in just a week. 10 athletes stand out this year. They're refugees who fled war, terror, and violence in DR Congo, Ethiopia, Syria, and Sudan. It's the first time refugees are taking part in the Games under the Olympic Committee banner. Here's an excerpt from our in-depth report that airs Saturday at 9:10 p.m. Paris time.
Used to facing the world's cruelty alone, these athletes have had to learn to live and work together.
Okay. Let's go, Garen. Yes.
And who better than a former relay champion to create that team dynamic? John Ansra, a 61-year-old Kenyan, is both trainer and life coach.
And they came from different places, from Somalia, from Ethiopia, we have Congolese. And we told them, as human beings, all human beings are the same. Because when they came, they still had animosity from where they came from.
Every night after training, the athletes settle down to sleep, dreaming of getting to the Games in Brazil. Yolanda Mabika, aged 28. She's from the Democratic Republic of Congo, but has been living in Brazil for 3 years. Separated from her parents because of war in the Kivu region, she grew up in a children's home in Kinshasa, where she learned judo.
This is the first time that refugees will participate in a great international competition. I'm here to do something good, so that other refugees can be happy and proud.
Life has already taught Yolanda strength and resilience. The same goes for Popol Misenga, who arrived in Rio alongside her in 2013. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, whenever they lost, their former coach locked them up in a cage. If he participates in the Olympics, this time Popol will seek victory, not out of fear, but because he wants it with all his heart.
I constantly think about it. I'm fully focused on the goal of the Olympics.
That's it for this edition. More news coming up on France 24.